All right, I'm going to share my screen really quick just so you can see that we've talked to about 20 candidates here. Um, and our answers have been so-so. So they put it into a nice little chart for us. But unfortunately, like the majority of the responses so far is that they're not giving us a firm answer on whether or not they're supportive of property rights and whether or not they're willing to support our legislation. The vast majority do say that they will support legislation for eminent domain that protects landowners' property rights, but we want that to be 100%, not 57%, right? And I think we just need to keep hitting home on this issue. So I'm going to put a link into the chat for this document that walks you through exactly how to what to say to the candidates and how to reach out to them if you haven't seen this before. We've also sent it out by email. I think it's on several of the Facebook pages at this point, but I'll put it in the chat again. And if folks can just keep doing what they're doing, continuing to reach out to all these folks, get some straight answers so we can either one, know who to vote for, so we know, who's on our side, or two, hold whoever wins accountable. It'd be amazing. But with that, I'm going to stop sharing screen, quit yapping about the things we've been talking about for months here, less more folks in, and then I'm going to introduce our guest speaker, the star of tonight's show. So, Dr. Lindsey Gulden. Lindsey is a data scientist that's actually originally from Indiana, who, along with a coworker, actually blew the whistle in 2019, was it, Lindsey? On over $10 billion worth of fraud at ExxonMobil. And now she has taken up the mantle on carbon capture and storage schemes, which is just amazing for our side, right? This is the kind of person we need fighting the good fight with us. But I'm going to kind of quit wasting y'all's time telling you how brilliant she is and let you see for yourself. So, Lindsey, please take it over. The mic is all yours.
Gosh, thanks, Emma. With an introduction like that, I'm sure to disappoint. But hi, my name's Lindsey Gulden. I am indeed originally from Columbus. I actually grew up right on the Brown County, Bartholomew County line, out near Gnawbone, if anyone knows where that is. So Indiana is near and dear to my heart. I did spend more than a decade working for ExxonMobil. Um, I I'm actually trained. Yeah, so I worked for ExxonMobil, ended up being fired for something not related to CCS. The Department of Labor found that ExxonMobil, probable cause that ExxonMobil had violated the law in our firing. And I guess that experience kind of made me step back and ask the question, if they're willing to lie about something as basic as garden variety fraud, which is what we reported internally, then what else are they willing to lie about? And that kind of led me down the rabbit hole of carbon capture and storage. So I guess I have the training to look at this sort of thing, and then also the work experience in oil and gas. So wells, reservoirs, etc., are things that are familiar to me. I guess I have a deck that I'm going to go through, but I hope you guys will just pipe up and ask for clarification and questions as you see fit. I can't see when people raise their hands, so just holler, just say, hey, and then I'll stop and ask questions rather than let them fester. I'm hoping this can be informal, even though I do have a deck to remind me what I'm saying. So let me share.
This is a very formal meeting. I wore my best white tie to the black tie to this, so I can't believe you'd think this would be informal.
I am indeed wearing cutoff sweatpants shorts, but I won't let y'all see that. So let's see. I'm up in my attic here. I'm actually in the Northeast now, and it's not usually this hot, but it's pretty hot today. So if I'm sweating, that's the reason. So struggling to walk and chew gum at the same time here. Can everybody see my screen? Oops. It has
Yeah, but it's just we can see the whole
loading.
screen.
Right. Okay. So I'll start the talking. Well, that's loading. So carbon capture and storage sounds great. It sounds like something that's going to address climate change. We capture carbon, we store it. What could go wrong? In reality, it is an unsafe, untested practice that is a public money grab for corporations and a dangerous experiment for all the rest of us. Sharing is unavailable. Okay, well, we'll figure this out. Let's see. It's going to go like that. Okay, so 3 things I want to tell you today. I'm going to go step into exactly what carbon capture and storage is. I think this particular group, you guys are, it's maybe too high level for you. So if it's known territory, tell me, I'll speed up. 2, I want to walk you through why carbon capture and storage is dangerous. It specifically relates to the chemical and physical characteristics of carbon dioxide. And 3, the thing that I want you to know is that despite what you will hear from people like Wabash Carbon Services or ExxonMobil or other folks who are carrying out carbon capture and storage, as it is proposed, carbon capture and storage is an experiment. So we're all being guinea pigs so that other folks can take tax credits from the federal government. So I'm going to try one more time because the slideshow. Oh, good. There it goes. I'm going to move you guys. Okay. So when we're talking about carbon capture and storage, what are we talking about? There are really 2 big types. And the type that you hear about most frequently when you hear about promotional materials, and actually for the case of what's going on in Indiana, is type 1. It's carbon capture with geologic storage. So this is basically where you take concentrated carbon dioxide that you collect from an industrial source, in this case ethanol, and you compress it such that it's very, very, it's supercritical, which is kind of between a liquid and a gas. And you inject it deep underground into a saltwater aquifer that's deep, deep underground. Type 2 is carbon capture and storage that's actually enhanced oil recovery. Sometimes it's called CCUS, carbon capture utilization and storage. So this is actually what carbon capture and storage really was. Carbon capture and storage is a rebrand of enhanced oil recovery, where you're using the exact same technology to take carbon dioxide and inject it deep underground into an oil reservoir, either an aging oil reservoir or tight oil and gas reservoir, and you're using that CO2 to help produce more oil. Basically, the CO2 not only increases the pressure in that aging reservoir, but it also makes the oil flow better, less viscous, so it flows better to the well. Now, the most common type of CCS in use around the world today, and especially in the United States, is EOR. So type 2 is what oil and gas really does have lots of familiarity with. Type 1 is what we're talking about in Vigo and Vermilion counties. It's what we're talking about across the Midwest. So this carbon capture and storage where we're injecting CO2 into deep saltwater aquifers. Let's see, why is it not advancing? Okay, so hot off the press, this is actually stuff that a colleague and I are putting together to publish papers on this. So you're like literally the second audience to see it. Even though folks like ExxonMobil or the Wabash Carbon Services folks will talk about how carbon capture and storage is a solution for climate change. It turns out that it doesn't even, it's not even a solution for climate change. So because capturing that carbon and injecting it actually requires energy and requires the burning of fossil fuels, it ends up, in many cases, not all, but in many cases, releasing more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere than is injected to begin with. That's especially true in the case of EOR, but in some applications, it's even true when we're injecting it into saline aquifers. So this is some work that we did in Texas, where we looked at all the planned CCS projects in Texas, and we kind of mapped out the carbon flows, so methane, carbon dioxide, fossil fuel use across not only CCS, but also all of the industrial processes that are being used to generate that carbon dioxide. And we mapped out exactly what the balance was for emissions. So when you hear people say carbon capture and storage is a solution for climate change, no, it's not. Unfortunately, carbon capture and storage is a tax grab for corporations because of a part in our tax code known as 45Q colloquially. Corporations that inject carbon dioxide underground are eligible for very large tax credits from the US federal government. So under Biden, the Inflation Reduction Act increased the amount of, substantially increased the amount of tax credit that corporations can get for this. And under Trump and the big beautiful bill, that also further increased the amount of money that corporations are eligible for injecting carbon dioxide. So you'll hear folks who are advocating for CCS talk about how it brings jobs and money to communities, to rural communities, to communities that may be otherwise starved for jobs. That is a very iffy proposition. And behind all those jobs that they are or are not offering are a really big imbalance in who is benefiting from the tax credits to incentivize this technology. So I did some quick math looking at the permits for Wabash's recent permits for the two wells in Indiana. At the current rate under 45Q of $85 a ton of CO2 injected, over the life of those wells, Wabash Carbon Services is eligible to receive $1.7 billion of US taxpayer money simply for injecting that CO2. So it's a huge tax grab. Vigo and Vermilion County residents are going to receive $0 in tax credits. That doesn't make you angry. I'm not real sure what does. Oh, I left this in. I'm not sure what folks came and talked to residents ahead of this particular project, but down in Texas, where I was giving a similar talk in Cheek, Texas, ExxonMobil had applied for a permit just like the Class 6 permit for a project similar to the one that's in Vigo and Vermilion. And they sent folks around to local groups saying, don't worry, carbon capture and storage is safe. It's just like a can of soda. And they literally passed out cans of soda pop saying, here, look, this has carbon dioxide in it and you're drinking it, we're drinking it, fine. Don't worry about it. The dose makes the poison. In a can of pop is about 2 grams of carbon dioxide. ExxonMobil received a permit to inject 53, I think that's the same thing. Trillion? Is that trillion? 53 trillion grams of carbon dioxide. Although the Wabash project is a little smaller, it's actually of the same order. So it's trillions of grams of carbon dioxide. We're not talking about the same thing. So why is concentrated carbon dioxide dangerous? Concentrated carbon dioxide, is a toxic asphyxiant. In the concentrations that we're breathing right now, this is about 400 parts per million as I breathe in. Concentrated carbon dioxide can make you very, very ill at concentrations as low as 4% and can kill you at concentrations as low as 8%. This has been well known for decades. Concentrated carbon dioxide acidifies your blood. So the reason we're all breathing it out is because it's toxic. If it stays in our blood acidifies and we end up dying. It also is an asphyxiant because it's an asphyxiant. This is just a picture of a place in Cameroon in Africa. This was a kind of a freak accident in 1986 where this lake, Lake Nyos, it's in a volcanic region. It had a bunch of accumulated carbon dioxide in the water. And because of weather changes, the carbon dioxide suddenly was released from the lake. So more than 100,000 tons of carbon dioxide were released from the lake. And literally everyone in the village next to this lake, so 1,700 people and all of their livestock were killed because concentrated carbon dioxide is toxic and an asphyxiant. Let's see. Another reason, a very important physical reason, characteristic of carbon dioxide that makes it really dangerous is that carbon dioxide is heavier than air. So unlike methane, which is what natural gas is, which when it leaks out of a pipeline or when it leaks from a well, that is lighter than air and dissipates. Carbon dioxide hangs out near the ground and it finds a low level, which is bad because we hang out near the ground and we breathe near the ground. And so carbon dioxide, you see here, this is a carbon dioxide truck that's transporting carbon dioxide, probably for something like carbonation of beverages or something else. And it's leaking. This, you see the cloud here, that's actually water that's come out of the, it's very, very concentrated carbon dioxide. It's very cold. So what you're seeing here is not actually carbon dioxide, it's the water vapor that is basically become a cloud because it's so cold. But this does show you where the carbon dioxide is going. So you can use that frozen water vapor to figure that out. So the carbon dioxide is coming down into this valley and it's going sinking down. Another major characteristic about carbon dioxide that makes it really dangerous is that it physically is an extremely compressible gas. So when we pipe carbon dioxide from an ethanol plant to the carbon dioxide injection, the class 6 well, or when we're compressing it for injection into the class 6 well, we have to make it very much smaller to get it into supercritical form, which is fine. It takes a lot of energy. We do that. However, if there is a rupture in the equipment, so if there's a rupture in that pipeline or there's a blowout, because it is so compressible, it is also very, very decompressible, which is bad because the energy of its decompression can cause a lot of damage. So it turns out that we can see what happens when a carbon dioxide pipeline ruptures. Folks over in the UK, back in, I think it's in the mid 2010s, I think it's 2013, they decided, as people were trying to think of how we were going to build out the carbon capture and storage infrastructure, they decided to do an experiment where they went to an old army base and they buried a CO2 pipeline underground with the specs of what they thought they would be building out for their new infrastructure. And then they forced a rupture, and then they filmed it. They also then recorded the concentrations of CO2 near that. This is the video of that. I'm going to play it. What you're seeing
This video shows a rupture of a buried, dense phase carbon dioxide pipeline. The experiment was conducted
That's where it's
in a safe
rupturing.
environment. The DNVGL was made out of testing and research centre to assess the consequences of such ruptures in terms of mass outflow, rate of formation, and dense gas dispersion. The viewer should note that the extent of the visible plume does not necessarily represent the extent of the dense gas hazard.
So that's sped up, but nevertheless, sped up nevertheless. The carbon dioxide is heavy and it's spreading rapidly. So it's basically anything in that path is in danger. They published a paper, the DNVGL folks published a paper in the International Journal of Greenhouse Gas Control, where they looked at what the concentration of CO2 was at various spots from this rupture. And 1,000 feet downwind of this rupture, the carbon dioxide concentration was high enough to kill for several minutes. So this is an extremely dangerous situation. This particular video is no longer on the internet. So I had to post it on my own YouTube page. I mean, for obvious reasons, it's no longer on the internet. It's important to know, though, that that video we just watched is actually a relatively small rupture. So accidental ruptures in real life can and will be enormous. We know this because we've actually already had it happen here in the United States. So in 2020, in Mississippi, rural Mississippi, like if you look on Google Maps, like you don't think anyone lives there, that rural of Mississippi, about a mile outside of a town, very small little hamlet called Sartartia, there was a pipeline rupture, a CO2 pipeline rupture underground after a whole bunch of rain basically caused the ground to shift. So very rural Mississippi, the cloud of CO2 went down the hill and went to the outskirts of Sartartia. Somewhat miraculously, and by an accident of topography, really, only 45 people, no one died. Only 45 people out of something like 100 went to the hospital. And some of the people still have lasting damage from that. They have lasting neurological problems. Emergency vehicles could not approach this because they need oxygen to run their internal combustion engines. The emergency response team was unaware that there was a carbon dioxide pipeline there, so they really didn't know what they were getting into. But the fact that no one died was basically because it happened by luck to be in a very rural area. Importantly, that released at least 40 times the amount of carbon dioxide that was released in the video you just saw. This is actually, I guess one of the good news, but yet not so good, is that the pipelines in the Midwest are less likely to leak than pipelines along the Gulf Coast. That would not make me want to live next to carbon dioxide infrastructure. Okay, so the other point, besides the fact that carbon dioxide is dangerous, the thing that I really want to drive home is that CCS is an experiment, especially when we're talking about injecting carbon dioxide into saline aquifers. So you will hear, don't worry, we've been using wells and reservoirs and drill bits for almost a century now. We have tons of experience characterizing reservoirs and cap rock. Everything's fine. Don't worry, we got this. And that is actually true when you look at oil and gas reservoirs. So in the United States, there are almost 1 million active oil and gas reservoirs. Around the world, there are many more. So there's a lot of experience with that. And in fact, you could even assert that for EOR wells, the enhanced oil recovery wells. There's quite a few in the United States. It's a very well-established technology. The problem is that the physics and the chemistry of pumping oil and gas out of the ground, or even doing EOR, is very different than the physics and chemistry from injecting supercritical CO2 into saltwater. Injecting supercritical CO2 into saltwater increases the pressure underground, which is not what's happening when we're pumping oil and gas out of the ground. We're lowering the pressure. In fact, that's even true in EOR because it's already under pressure because we've already removed oil and gas from the reservoir. Worldwide, there are generously counted 12 CCS facilities, like 12. That's across all of the world. 12 that are operating where they're injecting carbon dioxide into saline aquifers. And many of them shut down frequently. Like you're probably well aware of ADM Decatur having to shut down over in Illinois because they had an unexpected leak in their infrastructure. So 12 is the upper limit of what's actually going on. We really don't have experience with this. It's an experiment. So I guess what can happen when we're injecting large amounts of fluid underground? Pressure spreads rapidly, much more rapidly than fluid. And when you're pressurizing a saline aquifer, you can start shooting salt water out of places you were not expecting to shoot salt water out of. This is an image of literally a 100-foot geyser of very briny water going on the farmland in Crane County, Texas. What's going on out in Crane County is that they're injecting a lot of hydrofracturing wastewater underground, but it's effectively the same physics as what's going on in carbon capture and storage, where you're injecting CO2 into saline aquifers because you're pressurizing that. You're pressurizing the reservoir or the underneath potential paths to the surface. Now, again, it's cold comfort, but I suppose it's some comfort in that in Indiana, in Illinois, there's not quite as much heritage oil and gas infrastructure where people have drilled the place up to Swiss cheese to try to find oil and gas, but there still are, especially because of heritage shale oil production. There still are heritage oil and gas wells that can cause this problem. So again, it's an experiment. Our best science and engineering cannot guarantee that carbon dioxide will stay put. So I'll give you a quick overview of some of the science and engineering that still is at issue with this particular use case. So remember I said that the physics and chemistry of injecting CO2 into saline aquifers is not subtle. It's very new. I'll give you a quick overview of that. So this is the ideal. We have an industrial plant, maybe it's ethanol, maybe it's natural gas processing or ammonia generation. We collect the CO2, keep it out of the atmosphere. We pressurize it and stuff it deep, deep, deep down under, deep below the drinking water into a aquifer, and it stays there forever. That's what the ideal is. Reality is a bit more complicated. So we talked about the fact that aging and abandoned infrastructure, so typically with oil and gas production, but can be even aging water wells. We may or may not know where it is and what condition it's in. Second, we don't actually know the extent to which supercritical CO2 dissolved into brine corrodes steel. So if you look at recent peer-reviewed literature in science and engineering journals, you will read sentences like, the kinetics of steel dissolution in supercritical CO2 and brine are unknown. It's just not a situation that anyone has bothered to test before, because this is not something people thought of before CCS. So we don't really understand whether or not the steel that we're using for casing and in the infrastructure to implement CCS is going to stand the test of time. Second, when you do a seismic survey, so you are familiar, I'm sure, with the fact that Wabash Carbon Services and others who are trying to get Class 6 permits sometimes do 2D, two-dimensional, and three-dimensional seismic surveys, where they're basically doing an ultrasound, literally, of the subsurface to see where faults and fractures are and layers of rock are. They can see really big ones on that, but the resolution of that data is down to about 20 or 30 meters, maybe. So there are likely undetectable fractures and faults that they can't see on seismic data, which provide pathways to the surface or to drinking water. Second, it's really difficult to characterize whether or not the layer that you say is going to be confining all of that CO2, whether you cannot guarantee that there are no cracks in that, because you can't basically take off all of the soil and go, oh, let's see, how's the cap rock doing? So they can make a pretty good guess, but even in oil and gas, they are sometimes wrong about this. Furthermore, there's some evidence lately that CO2 dissolved in brine actually dissolves shale. And the thing that the confining layers are typically made of is shale. So we're really not sure that this CO2 dissolved in brine is going to stay put for decades or centuries. Presumably our grandchildren will also want to drink water. I'm going to skip over that. That's the ExxonMobil. So with this recap, you'll see why I'm never invited to cocktail parties. Let's see, concentrated carbon dioxide, dangerous. It's a toxic asphyxiant. You do not want to breathe it in at concentrations above what we breathe it in every day. It's heavier than air, and it's very decompressible. Those three things, those three characteristics, make it unique of almost any gas that we pipe around the country, and it makes it uniquely dangerous. Also, carbon capture and storage, in the case of injecting it into saline aquifers, is an experiment. It endangers residents and it threatens our groundwater. So it threatens not only people today, but it threatens the groundwater of our descendants. It cannot be guaranteed safe, even with our best science and engineering. So the EPA will say, oh, we have a very robust Class 6 permitting process. It's robust, and it doesn't make it safe. It's just not good enough. CCS pads corporate profits with public dollars, and it does not slow climate change. with that, I'll take some questions. Let's see, Emma, or questions if you have any, or we can just.
I am sure there are plenty of questions. I know I have a few, but the first one in the chat is, can we get copies of the slides?
Yes, of course. Let's see. How do I stop sharing? Can't walk and chew gum at the same time. Certainly, I'm happy to send the deck around. And I'm also, if you're interested in other depressing links about CCS, I seem to be collecting them, so I'm happy to share.
You and me both.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure we would love to have our hands on anything that you've put together, because I'm sure it is brilliant. I do see that Whitney has a hand up, so somebody at Universal has a question.
Hi, Lindsay. It's Susan. I've met you on the Illinois
Susan. Good to see you again.
Good seeing you. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. Couple questions is, first of all, when they do their Class 6 wells, doesn't it seem odd that they approve wells even though they may not have core samples of the actual site? Does that seem, I mean, to me, I found that just horrific that I'm going to call them WVR. We know that we call them Wabash Valley Resources. They go under the name Wabash Carbon Services, as well as a bunch of other names, believe it or not. But anyway, in their permit, when they were trying to they were thinking about injecting into the Mount Simon sandstone. And then when they did that, they figured out, oh, it's going to take, they thought it was only going to take 2 wells to inject the 20 million metric tons. It ended up saying it was going to take 17 wells to inject the 20 million metric tons. So then they decided, oh, we can't do that. So now we're going to use the Potosi dolomite, but there's no core sample for that. They said they couldn't get a core sample because they lost circulation during drilling. And so their permit basically says, well, we approve your permit. You can construct your well, but we're going to need a core sample. And I'm just confused by all that.
Yeah, you're right.
Didn't the man say he had samples all the way going down?
Yeah, he doesn't. So
yeah, I fully agree with you. And 2, dolomite is carbonate, which means that it's very different than injecting into sandstone. But hopefully they dealt with that, but I doubt they did. Yeah, that is bad. The Class 6 regulations. So I have spent more time looking at the Class 6 regulations than I would have predicted that I would be doing several years ago. The Class 6 regulations are really not very strong. So the EPA will frequently talk about how they have enough regulation. And when you talk about other regulations for protecting groundwater, it's known as RECRA, which is like protecting against various hazardous wastes. EPA has done a much better job, actually, of defining a regulation that actually has a chance of protecting the groundwater. The Class 6 regulations don't specify that you must have site-specific data, which is, I mean, heinous, actually. You're exactly right.
Well, they also said that there was, in their permit, they only have the CO2 plume as their area of review. They show no pressure front or anything. And then they said, well, there's no brine down there. But we went back and we looked under, because they fell under this thing. It was called the Wabash Carbon Safe Study. And when you look at the pressures on that, they gridded it out like 22 miles. And you could see the pressure was almost 22 miles across.
Yeah.
So it's things like that. And then also, of course, we found emails where the company was asking to inject twice the amount in half the time. I mean, it's all these things. It's like, what is going on here? You know?
The thing that's going on is, I mean, to be blunt, it's corruption.
Yes.
So I guess, actually, can I ask a question? I have so many things so many ways I want to answer that question that I'm actually struggling to, which do I answer first? But what is the status? The permit has been approved. Did you guys file an appeal?
Yes, an appeal was filed,
Okay.
and we watched the hearing, and the judges were asking the same questions we asked. And then they also noted that in their administrative record, there was 100 blank pages. So they were questioning that. So basically what happened at the end was they remanded it back to the Region 5 EPA. And so my daughter and I called because we got a letter from Region 5 that said, oh, it's okay, and we're going through with this. We say it's fine. So we called the adjudication office because we wanted to know, okay, how does that work? Are the judges going to read the papers? And guess what? No. When they remand something back, it just tells them, take another look at this. And Region 5 said they did, and it's fine. I was shocked. I thought the judges would look at it and be like, oh, so I did write kind of a nasty letter to Region 5 because my name was mentioned in the appeal because I had wrote comments and commented at the hearing originally. And that's another thing. Unless you use specific words during an EPA hearing or a certain word in comments, you cannot then appeal unless that was brought up during the comments, which was a part I didn't even know. So yeah, they didn't do anything. They just wrote me a letter and said, look, we're going to go through with this, and we're not even going to answer any more public comments or have another public meeting. And I wrote him back and I said, that's not right. And that's where that left. I mean,
okay. So I guess they have a permit and they're constructing.
They haven't even drilled the hole yet. This is what kills me. Yeah, but they've been saying, see, I think the only reason they haven't done anything is because in our case, they got special laws. They paid over $1 million to our state house to get special laws that they only have to garner 60% voluntarily. And I'm telling you, 99% of our people in our county is against it. And so I don't think they will get that 60% voluntarily to force all of us into pooling. That's what I think they're stuck on. And I think, well, I worry that they're waiting us out to see, and maybe I think they're going to go knocking on our neighbor's door and then, oh, we've got what we need. You just need to sign on. That's a big fear of mine. So
that's definitely what they're doing. That's actually what ExxonMobil did down in Cheek, Texas. That's exactly what they're doing. They're trying to wait you out, and that is what they're doing. It's been a real education for me looking at how you have to say, bring up an issue in public comment or at a meeting, and then only certain people have the ability to challenge it. So Pam Richard in Illinois, who is amazing. Like, I can't say enough nice things about Pam. She educated me on all this, and with Pam, we're trying to put together basically get a bunch of engineering students and law students who like work for cheap to start helping folks challenge this, challenge new permits. So make the right type of thing, public comments, write the right type of petitions for review, be strategic about it. But that's cold comfort for this particular permit because it's already been approved, which is awful.
Well,
but I think you're right on I guess it's a educate your neighbors sort of situation. I'm happy to talk to whoever it is. I can go talk to.
We have, of course, I get on the Illinois group and listen to you and what they have to say. And the reason being is because our project, it's just a crow's fly to the state line right here. And when WVR said that they were going to have this plume, the plume was only a half a mile. The CO2 plume was a half a mile from the state line. Okay, now we've got Indiana laws who is letting them do whatever the heck they want to do. But then you have Illinois state laws who passed the Safe CCS Act, as you know, that says, oh, you have to monitor this at least 30 years post-injection. But Indiana doesn't have that such law. And Wabash Valley Resources says they only have to watch it for 10 years. Well, my thing is, this is why we're working together, because what happens here is going to affect those landowners in Illinois,
Oh,
whether it
definitely.
be with the plume, the CO2 plume, or the pressure.
Yes, definitely. The fact that they're using, so the pressure front, I mean, it starts to get pretty technical, but it can go well beyond 10 times the radius of the plume. Also, those models, my bread and butter, what I actually know a lot about, I know a little about a lot and a lot about very little. But what I actually do know a lot about is computer models and how you can trust them and how you can't. The type of model that they use to model that plume is really, really unreliable. When you cannot specify, so folks actually, I'll send you around this presentation deck. I've got more in the extras about this, but like the very best, literally fossil fuel funded researchers at MIT tried to use the same type of computer model to model a CO2 plume for a dinky little box where they knew every single grain of sand. So they made their computer model match the dinky little box, and they like specified exactly what was in that box. And they tried to simulate supercritical CO2 flowing through that box and match reality, which they could see. They like, it was a box that they could had plexiglass on. And they, on that very, very tiny situation, they still couldn't use it to accurately map it. And you'll hear from oil and gas folks, which use these models, that we've been using these models for years. Yes, they have. The key difference is they have to constantly calibrate the models. So basically change them to make them match data after they start pumping. And furthermore, they've got a lot more data, and they're not even trying to know exactly where the plume is. They're trying to know the total volume of oil and gas coming out of the reservoir. So it's a very different thing that this same type of model is being used for in class 6. So the fact that they have a plume on their WVR's application, that's just one number. It could go anywhere else. It almost certainly is wrong, to be honest. So you're exactly right to push on that. With Illinois, there's a reason, quite a strong likelihood that it'll show up there.
And my last question is, I've been reading and of course we've been researching for the past 3 years just to figure all this stuff out. But they're now also saying that they can do stacked, right? Stacked CO2. Is that still kind of like a thing that they're saying? If we can't, yeah, like stackable, layers. Yeah. Because they feel like the pressure is, it's crazy, right? There's too much CO2 being blasted down there. It creates too much pressure. So now they're looking in at like stacking, like here you inject and over here you inject here, and then
they theoretically can stack it. It remains a bad idea. It's just more to it's greed. They're trying to get more subsidy. Is honestly it. That it's technically possible, and all of the risks remain. It doesn't make it any better. I think they get a new, if I understand the regulations correctly, for each new well they have a 12-year tax credit that they can. So once they get, they have their approval to inject whatever it is, 800,000 something into Vigo County, 800,000 into Vermilion. Once they have that and they run out of it, if they come up with a new well, then the clock starts again, and they have 12 more years to get 45Q subsidy. Which I guess the other thing I wanted to talk about on those regulations, they have a lot of steps and they do a lot of stuff, but there's not any hard and fast rules on those regulations. So they don't say you have to stop. They don't specify under what concentration of brine damaging your groundwater. What's the change in concentration that means you have to stop injecting? They don't define it. So they basically say, we'll leave it to director discretion, which means basically the highest bidder. So the regulation is not very strong. My opinion is that the reason it's not very strong is that over the past 20 years, oil and gas has had this billion with a B dollar lobbying campaign. So a colleague and I basically were, let me start at the beginning. A colleague and I were like, how on earth are we using climate dollars to risk people's lives and produce more oil? Like, why? Like even the idiots in Washington can probably see this as a problem, right? So we went and we looked at lobbying records. So for the past 20 years, we looked at all of the lobbying that has been done of the federal government by different, that has to be disclosed. And found all of the lobbying that's been done for CO2 pipelines, for CCS, for all these euphemisms for that. And over the course of the past 20 years, the industry has spent almost $1 billion in 2024 dollars lobbying about CCS. And one of their key targets was the EPA. They lobbied the EPA heavily. They lobbied Congress. They lobbied other regulators like the IRS, who pays the tax credit. And I think they probably lobbied them to get the regulations more favorably. They had them make it easier to implement the injection wells. That's my speculation. But so not speculation is the amount of money spent. Also not speculative is who they lobbied. My speculative statement is their goal was probably to get favorable regulation for this project.
I put the report from that into the chat if folks want to read the whole thing because it is pretty good, but we can also share it out around to folks too. I do see Josh has his hand raised, and there are a lot of questions in the chat, so I'll turn it over to you, Josh, first, and then we'll go back to the chat.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right. So yeah, my name is Josh Leffel, and unfortunately I'm neighbors with Poet Biorefining, and they've decided that they're going to do carbon capture in our neighborhood too. So I've been getting to know some different people in different counties that are battling the same thing from the same people, Poet and their partner, Vault 4401. Something that seems confusing to me is with our project here in North Manchester, Indiana, they tell us they want to pump in 250,000 metric tons a year for 12 years. And I guess what I call the target area, the initial injection area, the one that they try to obtain the 70% voluntary, easements from, it's about a 0.6 mile radius around that well site. It was bigger twice before. They started larger and they couldn't get what they wanted. So they shrunk the circle down. They still couldn't get what they wanted as far as, voluntary easements. And then they shrunk the circle again and they moved the location of it. So it would only encompass just a handful of landowners at that point. Now, they never decreased the project size at all. They just kept decreasing the injection area, the storage space. Now, what's puzzling to me is Madison County, Indiana, is battling the same type of project from the same two people, the same two companies. But they're injecting, don't hold me to this, it's between 400,000 and 450,000 metric tons a year for 12 years. And what's weird to me, and you would know more about this than I would, they have a 0.6 mile radius. They have the exact same size projected for their initial storage area that they're trying to obtain their 70% from. And they done the same thing. They put that well in a location where only like 4 or 5 landowners are basically needed to get this 70% approval. So there's that. And you said you were a whistleblower or something like that, and I'd love to be one on Poet because I frankly hate them if they're listening to me. I just I'd like them to know that I'm coming after them. I will win this one way or the other. We will win. Anyways, I wanted to read you something out of a magazine they put out. It's called Vital by Poet. It's volume 19, issue 1. Now, I'm sure that you know right now that Poet does not actively sequester any CO2 at any of their locations across the nation. You're well aware of that. I'm sure I know I am. Um, they've been producing this zero carbon fuel for NASCAR, and everybody's sick to death of me hearing about this, me talk about this, whatever. And they also say they produce this zero carbon fuel on a national level, on a commercial scale. They told us in North Manchester they needed to do carbon capture so that they could produce zero carbon fuel. But they already do it two different ways, two different places, for NASCAR and for on a commercial scale. So they were always telling us that they were telling America now that they came to a zero carbon by basically taking credit for the farmers' regenerative or low carbon practices, along with their capturing of some of their CO2 for market use, and they have their own regenerative CO2 practice where it is emitted through their smokestack. And then they will tell you that all of that then gets reabsorbed by the next year's corn crop. So when you combine all that, you have a zero carbon. That's what they said. However, in this new magazine, I just want to read this to you since you seem interested in this. This is from Poet. It says, by combining regenerative ag practices with carbon capture, utilization, and here's where they change this all of a sudden because they've never said this before, and sequestration and advanced biotechnology, Poet's bioethanol achieves zero and beyond. In fact, some bioethanol achieves a CI score as low as -14. That's in their magazine. So my question to you, how long do these companies get to openly lie about what they're doing to the American public, to the American consumer, to NASCAR, to everybody about where their fuel's coming from and how it's being made before they get in trouble? I have sent emails to everybody until I'm blue in the face. These people are con artists, they're scammers, they're scum. So, I mean, is this normal? Do they just get to lie for the rest of their lives? How long can they do this before they get caught?
Well, sounds like we could have I should come over for a barbecue. We'd have a very long, it has to be like a weekend long thing. We'd have a long conversation. So one, there is no such thing as zero carbon fuel, zero carbon NASCAR fuel. It does not exist. That's greenwashing. Two, climate change is actually a really big problem. And if we don't do something about it, we're screwed. So there are folks like Poet who are cynically using people's concern about climate change to make a buck. Unfortunately, so corporate interests, Poet, oil and gas, have most, at least national politicians in the pocket. Because they take, after Citizens United, they can take unlimited money. So the answer to your question, how long do they get to lie about this? It's as long until the American public is like, would you quit lying to me and actually do something in our interests? Let's address climate change because it's going to hurt our grandchildren or hurt us actually at the rate we're going. And stop lying to us and keep our jobs. Like, we need jobs. We need a livable planet. Stop taking money from these people who are trying to cynically exploit our concern. So the answer is really, we actually have all the tools we actually need to address climate change, which is literally, and I switched to renewables and battery storage, which is coming down to the point that it's actually cheaper than fossil fuels, although you would never know that if you listen to the information that's being fed to you by many moneyed interests. What we don't have is political will. So the thing that has to happen is the right and the left, anyone concerned about anything, everyday people basically have to say, we need money out of politics, we need you to actually act in our interest, we're going to vote you all out if you keep doing this. Otherwise, it's honestly been going on for decades, and no one has figured it out. But I think it's getting to the point that people will.
I know.
What about the different sizes of their?
Oh, that is possible because so that's possible. I mean, honestly, that plume thing is as I said, it's a guess. It's just a guess. And it sounds like they're probably screwing around with it to get lower amounts for the landowners. But if they make a deeper injection, so they inject like just at a thin layer, the same amount, it's going to go out this amount. But if they inject here, 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 and here, they can pretend that it's not going to go so far.
I remember it's not the game they were going to play.
They're playing games with modeling, probably.
Okay, that's what I figured. That's about all I had.
So I know we're coming up on time. There's still a lot of questions in the chat. So Lindsay, do you have a hard stop?
I do not have a hard stop until 6 my time. I guess Indiana's, you've switched to daylight savings, so.
Well, really quick, before we get back to all these questions, I know people will probably feel free to start dropping off at 4, but Susan was going to give a quick update on the legal efforts and what's going on there. So I wanted to just give her a chance to do that, and then we can get back to answering some of these questions.
Okay, as y'all know, we're working with Derek Broughton, who is the lawyer from North Dakota, and already run a case or won a case there on land rights. So we're working with him. We've got a meeting coming up this Thursday. It's the steering committee. We've formed it with a few people from each county, so each county is kind of represented. If you know a county, that wants to join in, because this isn't just us, and it's not just you. It's all of Indiana. And anyway, Bold made up these little sheets here, and we're going to start using them to start fundraising, because unlike these billion-dollar companies, none of us can afford it. That's why we all have to join together to hire a lawyer to represent all of us. So we're going to start, getting money together. We want people to go online. We're called the Indiana Action Team. And when I say we're called, it's not just us. It's every county in Indiana can join the Indiana Action Team. And you can go on there and you can donate, do it monthly, or if you want to do a one-time donation, it's tax deductible, which I think is great. If you want to write a check, we can do it at Bold, just make it out to Bold Education Fund for the Indiana Action Team. And Emma, maybe you could put this in kind of like an email or something so that people can print this out. But my plan, I think some other plans, we're going to go knocking on doors and we're going to say, hey, we're fighting for you, but we need help. And it's just money. I mean, it all comes down to money, which is something these companies have and want more of. So yeah, I would just, prompt everybody, tell your neighbors, join the Indiana Action Team, help us fight for your land rights. I mean, I want them to know that it's not fighting for us, it's fighting for all of us Hoosiers. So yeah, and also she's got a flyer too that's got all the information if your neighbors want to know more about it. I think this is good. But I think everybody needs to stress that this fight is for every one of us. And you may not be affected right now by CCS, but I'm telling you, you're going to be affected. There's multiple Class 6 injection wells in the application process at the EPA. And like Josh had mentioned, they make that plume so small so they can garner their percentage needed. Once they do that, then the DNR, as you know, the rules were passed, everybody else becomes forced into that pooling. And they can start just injecting and injecting, and it grows and grows and grows. And I'm telling you, at that point, you don't have a choice, because they're already doing it. And all they've got to do is go back to the EPA and say, hey, our area of review needs to be bigger. And that's how they're going to do it. So I'm just forewarning everybody. I mean, I hate to sound like, this person that doesn't trust anybody, but with these companies, we cannot trust none of them, because that's what they will do. So that's all I got. But ask people to donate to our lawyer fund. And yeah, we're going to win this. We're going to win this. Or I'm going to die trying, one or the other.
It's like pushing a rock up a hill. You just keep pushing because you don't want to be crushed. it's my general strategy. I'm like, let's keep pushing. I don't want to be rolled over.
Perfect. I did put the full flyer that Susan was talking about and a link in the chat. And again, we can share that out on Facebook and email, all that good stuff. Make sure it gets circulated. Let's go back to questions then after that lovely little speech. Jeff.
Here we go.
You are echoing.
Well, let's see.
Looks like he's in outer space.
At first, there was no brine down below, but there is because the pressure per foot is the same as water. Then there is no pore space because there's rock there. It's not like a old well.
Jeff, I'm really sorry. I'm struggling to understand what you're saying. Is there a way to mute? Do you have two mics maybe? There's an echo. Is it just me? Is everybody else?
There's an echo.
Okay. There's like a.
So
maybe just put it in the chat if you can't figure it out, or join or leave and come back, and maybe that'll fix it. While Jeff gets that sorted, there are a number of other questions in the chat. Let's see. I'm gonna try and get back to the first one, but if I miss any, just let me know. Sue is asking, do you have any data on the lack of shale layer integrity and where those exist in Illinois?
Shale is what actually, I think it's in. I will send. I'm saying 7 things at once. Let me start at the top. Yes. Shale is basically means just, like a shale roof. It's really, really very tight rock that stuff won't go through. It's very impermeable. And that's basically usually what is going to be the cap rock for all of these things. So it's everywhere. And it's all over. That it's in almost every single Class 6 permit I have seen, which is not all of them, but I've seen a lot. A shale layer is what is the cap rock. So it is all over Illinois, and it will be the top 2. I can send links to some academic articles, and then I guess also a review that a colleague and I put together for the Illinois State Legislature that talks about the latest research that shows that shale is degradable in the presence of supercritical CO2 dissolved in brine. I feel I'm missing a key piece of this question. Did I answer the question?
No, I think you did. Jeff, you're back. You got.
yes, I think we were out. Beautiful. So the shale that is degradable by the CO2 is called green shale because it's got carbonates in it. When the carbon dioxide, whether it's in gaseous, whether it's in liquids, dense liquid, or the supercritical fluid, it will turn into carbonic acid. So it's the acid attack of the shale that's going to release it. And we have that over there in Vigo and Vermilion counties. In Decatur, Illinois, they had 3 cap rocks. They blew through all 3 of them. And they were going up, trying to get up to 1 million metric tons per year. And when they got up to 800,000 metric tons a year, that's when it blew through it blew through the cement on the outside of the well casing, or it just dissolved and went on up. So the higher the rate, it's like pump loss. When you have a higher pressure, you're going to have a higher flow. The flow is by a squared rate. And then it's for power on it, for the power of destruction, it's a cubed. So if you double the rate of injection, you're going to have 4 times the pressure, and you can have 8 times the destructive force of the pressure waves. So that's just the physics there. And so with the other wells that are in play in North Dakota, they're injecting into former oil and gas. So there is a big reservoir of brine there. Here in Indiana, it's between the rock layers is where the brine is. Because when they drilled the well right there on Wabash Valley Resources for their stratigraphic well to see everything that was going on, it lost circulation 3 times. That's where the porosity is. So they think there's a big well out there. No, there's not. There's just a certain places where the water went away. They never were mitering. They didn't say how much water they were throwing in there. So there's 3 other tests, one of them which is the pressure rise test, and then there's the holding for it, and then there's you shut off the pumps and see how fast the pressure goes on. They never released that. And since the application for Wabash Valley Resources, the most of the applications are all blacked out. They're all redacted, so we don't get any of that data anymore for the rest of the state of Indiana, nor is there anything in Ohio for that. So it will be overpressure. They're going to get to an overpressure down there over 1,000 pounds. So right now it's around 2,100 psi down there at 5,000 feet. So they're going to get to 3,100 in no time at all. So at that point, they have to do some things like throwing hydrochloric acid to dissolve more rock, or they'll do the shape charges and blow those things out, try to get the pressure down so they can pump more. So with only one cap rock, they're going to blow through that in a hurry because they're trying to do a lot more than Decatur, Illinois at Archer Daniel Midland ever wanted to do. So the other piece of it too is the PHMSA is not going to help because the people that are in charge of safety there are all oil and gas. As you said, there's only 12 of these things worldwide. There's only 3 in operation. One of them's in Illinois, and the other 2 are up in North Dakota, the northwest corner. So the shrinking size of the plume is all a ploy because if they can get a small enough group, they can get that 70% and then take it and basically inject. So then they only have to tell people that the supercritical carbon dioxide is under their land after they can prove it. So when's that going to be? So the other question that was asked in the chat is how much is going to be released? Well, it's got so much energy because you're squeezing the molecules in the supercritical phase that it's going to unload the whole thing. And it's going to come up as gas when it gets to between 2,400 and 2,000 feet from the surface. It's going to form gaseous CO2, which is readily dissolvable in water. So you're going to have a pH of somewhere around 2.5 to 3.5. So it's highly acidic, and that's going to be traveling up. The excess gas is going to come up. And out there in Vigo and Vermilion counties, it was already mined it was strip mined as well as shaft mining. So all those ventilation ducts, that's where it's going to come up because there's no resistance to flow in the gaseous phase.
Jeff, would you like to look through some permits with? I have quite a few that could use your review.
Yes, we can.
Seriously, actually, though, if people want to look through permits and identify problems, if that's your wheelhouse.
Yes, if we can get them unredacted, because I have paper copies of the ones that they didn't redact.
Yeah,
so I'm assuming that they're doing the same thing as they have one stratigraphic well near where they want to do it, and then they take some that are 70 miles to one direction and 50 miles in the other direction, and they say everything's the same. No, it's not. No, it's not.
You're right. No, it's not.
And so with that 10 times plume, that's because you're trying to drive it into rock. The only way they're going to get it through the rock is dissolve the rock. And dolomite is a matrix of the calcium carbonate and magnesium carbonate. And it will dissolve by acid attack, which carbonic acid is. So as opposed to that soda pop at 5.7, this is 2.5. I think it's going to be a problem.
I know I saw Whitney and Kathy both had their hands up, but now they're down. So just want to make sure that you got your question answered.
No, Mom had a question.
Well, yeah, this is Kathy Campbell. Yeah, I do predictions based on plume modeling for CO2 pipelines and the health risks, how fast it'll hit, and that sort of thing. And so that's what I've been doing for the Illinois Commerce Commission here and the pipeline reviews, that sort of thing. But for sequestration areas, that's a different animal. And I appreciate Jeff's clarification that, yes, it will all come out as I kind of expected it would. But I don't know how to predict that rate and the concentration. The plume modeling, for the pipelines is a little bit different because you can predict it by time, by distance. I'm not saying it's perfect, and then you can start to apply the health guidelines from, say, the CDC, and I'm sure you're familiar with those as well, so that we can predict what people's risks are and what emergency medicine or IEPA, the emergency response has to be, how fast they have to be evacuated, et cetera. For the sequestration areas with high risk of leakage, I don't know that, I don't have that information. What risk would those people be at? How fast would it occur? I guess it'd all be released, but would it occur very slowly and possibly be diluted?
Right. That's a good question. So there really, I can think of 4 ways that this can go wrong. One, the fast events, fast in this case is bad. So like what you're modeling with pipelines, so a rupture that causes a Sartartia, Mississippi type problem.
Right.
A blowout at a well. So if you all remember the Deepwater Horizon with oil and gas blowout of that well, you could theoretically have the same thing at a CO2 injection well, although those are rare, but possible. 3, damage to groundwater, which is bad because you
sure
fix it, but it's not going to kill you immediately. It'll just be drinking arsenic laced water over time. It'll,
yeah, well, that's so much better. Thank you. we feel great now.
and then 4, you theoretically could have like leaks of CO2 through faults up to the surface, because under the surface, supercritical CO2 is buoyant relative to the fluids that are around. So it goes up to the surface. That would be really hard to predict, to be honest. I don't think you would have a model that could predict it, because it would depend on where are cracks and like the speed of the cracks and where the plume's going. It would be practically impossible to predict. I think it is possible, but it is not going to be a catastrophic leak in the same way that you have a pipeline rupture or a blowout or like near surface issues would be a catastrophic people killing leak. So
well, and I'm concerned trying, and I'm not trying to do the predictions for the sequestration area because I just don't have enough information to go on, but it's also troublesome that it's heavy, as you know. It's invisible. It has no odor, nor odorant like mercaptan, and fills up basements, etc. And it can travel great distances, as we know from the Lake Nyos disaster. So the people living on or near those areas, to me, are at unknowable risk.
I think you're right, and I think that it's a guy in Texas in Cheek had a great idea. Actually, his concern was, how do I tell my neighbors? Like, how do I get my neighbors to understand this is a big problem? And I think you guys have this same issue. You need everybody to be like, no, we are not going to put this stuff near us, because more CCS means more CO2 pipelines means, bad idea. Like, no one's winning here except for the guys who are lining the pockets. The guy in Texas suggested sending postcards to everyone, basically saying, you are in the potential, here's a public safety. This is what you need to do in case of a catastrophic CO2 leak. Climb to the 3rd story of your building fast. Get to a tree. Connect yourself to oxygen. Basically, make it look scary so that people are like, what the heck is this? Because it is scary, but they was suggesting that would get people's attention, which is what is necessary to get people to reject the whole.
Yeah, well, and I take your point. Well, in Iowa, they actually put out a sheltering in place guideline at one point. Emma, you probably remember that, and it was extensive. And basically, of course, this was for being along pipelines where you'd probably be hit with highly toxic levels within 5 minutes. And prior to that time, you were supposed to go into your closet, get out and put up your plastic sheeting with tape, round up everybody in the bathroom. It was a huge list of things that you had to keep in your hand at all time. And then One Earth suggested that everybody carry oxygen masks with them at all times, and offer to carry it. And then PIMSA, of course, does not recommend sheltering in place, and you can't evacuate people within 5 minutes, and your gas combustion car won't run. And even if you have an all electric, you'll probably be unconscious shortly. So you really don't want to be speeding down the road at 60 miles an hour while you become unconscious.
But at least we won't die of, arsenic laced groundwater.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, so on that cheery note, I will let somebody else have their question. But for the sequestration areas with these incredible volumes, the pipelines are horrid. And the amount released between shutoff valves is terrifying, as it should, and we should be terrified by that. But in the sequestration areas too, the unpredictability of the release, and it could be quite sneaky, actually, to my way of thinking. And I'm not an engineer, but yeah, thank you for reaffirming that this is just such a bad idea. But I would not want to be anywhere near a sequestration area, let alone a pipeline on this. And I think we do need to get that information out to people.
I remember it was 1987, 1989 is when Sheep Mountain had their CO2 injection well blowout. And I mean, it launched softball sized chunks of frozen CO2 into the air. And it took them over 2 weeks to be able to actually control it. I mean, the community had to be evacuated, everything. Fortunately, nobody died, but I mean, it's scary stuff. Whitney, what you got?
I just got another thing is, and I want to Jeff had said it. He's been down here. He's visited where these injection wells going to be in our counties. This is heavily mined ground. I mean, we have old mine shafts, and then Peabody Coal came in and literally surface mined the death out of our, landscape, to where it's just now starting. I don't even think there's any large trees out there, but there's small ones, right? I mean, you can tell something drastic has went on. My question is, when they inject in this and with those blastings, I mean, they had to drill us new water wells from the blasting because it ruined them. And so they had to come after they quit and drill us some new water wells so we could have water. But my fear is with the blasting, the rock, right? It creeps up there. And couldn't it actually, it could end up a long way away from where it's injected at if it follows a path, right? A crack or a fracture. And if it went into a mine shaft, right? Couldn't it follow like that tunnel too and end up quite a ways away?
Yeah. I can't believe my whole mother's side of the family is from Hoopeston, Illinois, and I can't believe I forgot about the coal mines. I actually don't know where are the coal strips above or below, where the relative to the CO2 injection layers, the dolomite, where is
above?
Above.
They're above. I don't know how far down they blasted. But
it seems like a remarkably bad idea.
They literally, for miles away, you would hear the beep, beep, beep before they did a blast, and you would feel it shake. I mean, and we were not like right next door. It was
still going on.
No. See, they moved out. They quit about, I don't know, 1970s.
Oh, okay.
and I'm telling you, there was nothing, barren land. The topsoil was gone, nothing. It looked horrid. And like I said, now it's starting to come back. The wildlife's coming back, and now here we are with this. Yeah. But my worry was, I had been reading more about CO2. They want to also try to inject it into unminable coal seams. And I was like, are you kidding me? And then I thought, is there unminable coal seams here they're trying to reach? Because if they use CO2 in an unminable coal seam, they can actually retrieve methane at another well location. I mean, it's absolutely asinine to everything that's going on. I mean, I don't know what to say, but
the blasts will have caused fractures. Yes, they're hard to control. Yes, that's a big problem.
You tell her about it.
Just a bad idea.
Off the top of the up.
Oh, sorry, I can't hear you.
Hey. Here's
What?
here's a little information. The aquifer was 120 to 130 foot deep according to the way the ground laid. Peabody went down to about 115 foot, left a little bedding there, and dug all the coal. I would say clear to Illinois. That's where they stopped stripping. 16,000 acres was stripped here in our neighbor neck of the woods. The big thing was, it was back then, I think it was a big money scheme. If you'll let this coal mine come in, we'll have electricity for the next 50 years. And we'll hire all the young guys here working the coal mine. And we didn't use our head then. But here's my question. And I don't know how to present it. There's nobody. And Susan and her daughters found out about this. It's like your body odor. They don't want to be around you. They don't want to hear what you say because what comes out of your mouth is not what they want to hear. And we're to a point right now, we don't, maybe they do, I don't know where to go. Our government leaders are in on this. Our governor of Indiana was in on this when he was still running his factory down there. If he won the governor's race. And this is what we've dealt with here. It's not good at all. And this little group stays together. We're here at every meeting. But we have, in the last 30 years, 35 years, we have dealt with this. And we still got the worst gravel roads that ties the two counties together that were blacktop all my time traveling. It's never been put back. There's another section of the road that they've got to do something with, but this is the way it was left.
Well,
And it wasn't pristine ground when they reclaimed it. I can tell you that.
let me add to what he's talking about with our roads, how bad it is. Our ground will not even hold asphalt.
No.
Every time they asphalt these roads, it just crumbles. I mean, the ground is that bad where they were mining here. And so we put up with gravel roads. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but this community, and this is what's heart-wrenching, these communities have been through it all for the past 30 years or more. And it's like, we've had enough. And I think they came here saying it was going to give jobs to all these coal miners who've been laid off. But the funny thing is, the youngest person that worked at that coal mine when I was a kid, right? He's gone. I mean, he's too old. There are no laid off coal miners here. And that's the sad truth, what they're trying to sell this as. And they picked on our communities because we're farmers. And that company said, we're going to make cheap fertilizer, which is not true. What they're going to do is they are gasifying pet coke and coal into hydrogen, capturing the CO2. Then they're going to send it over to their little ammonia plant, which doesn't even exist yet, and make what they're calling low carbon ammonia. And they say they're going to sell it cheap to us farmers. But those processes, even their own analysis, I found their documentation, says that ammonia for these farmers will not even be profitable for them to make because blue ammonia costs too much to make. And yeah. That's kind of like the whole story behind us here. And I'm telling you, it's not about fertilizer. That's BS. What this is about, I think, is they're trying to move the economy to more of a hydrogen economy, or they're also talking about using ammonia to mix in with coal power plants, like a mixture. And it's about energy. It's about putting energy on the grid and at our expense, and shipping it off to a market that doesn't even exist here. It exists over on the East Coast. We've already found that paperwork.
We don't want it either.
Exactly.
I'm
But
on the East Coast.
are you on the PGM market? Because that's where they're wanting to sell it to, because they actually get more money.
This is all greenwashing. There is no such thing as a hydrogen economy. That is just another market for coke and natural gas. There really isn't such a thing. Hydrogen's worse than methane. It's more explosive. No one wants to put, no, you should not put it in anything, and it is not green. That is a lie. So you're right, it's a lie. I'm really sorry to hear all this. Unfortunately, it's also very familiar because every single community I go to shares the same. I've talked to several communities now at this point who are dealing with this scourge. And it's all the same story. There's some extractive company some executive decides they can make a lot of money, and they go and they try to find someone who they think they can convince, oh, look, we got jobs, and who they think is not going to fight back or who does not, whatever. And they try to force it down their throat. And that is like the one thing that ties all of these together. And it's really,
yeah,
makes me mad.
I've been following Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and we're all getting bombarded with this. I mean, it's starting just to like.
Same thing. I was working with a group in Pratt, Kansas. Same thing. Down in this Cheek, Texas. Same thing. It's literally over and over again. They're trying to. The question, I'm like, well, would you like to put one of these in your backyard, sir? How about that lovely house you got there? I think what would be great would be a nice carbon dioxide injection well.
And the 12 years matters because this company here literally said at the public meeting when they were talking, now they don't even want to talk to us because we've educated ourselves too much. But when they were talking, said, we're only going to be here 12 years. And I couldn't figure out why. And then when I started looking at the tax credits, like, oh, the tax credits only run for 12 years. But you know what? Farmers are going to need fertilizer forever. So why only 12 years? It is for those tax dollars. You are 100% right. That's all I've got with you.
But I guess I missed your name, sir, in the hat.
Mark Usselman's his name.
Hi, Mark Usselman. Mr. Usselman, I thank you for giving me the backstory. I think it's great that you guys are working as a community. I think that is the path forward, like basically to take the power back, because I don't think it's right what's going on.
That was
You're on a mute.
You don't have to come to me to get the same.
Sorry.
Same idea, because this was a way of life. It wasn't that bad.
Oops, you're on mute again.
Well, I know we are at half an hour overtime. I saw Francis has had his hand up for a while now. So, Francis, if you want to ask your question, and then any other questions in the chat, we will go through and make sure they get answered and send them out to folks. And I'll also put my email in the chat. So if you have other questions, feel free to pass them along. I don't know, Lindsay, if you want to put your email in the chat, feel free. Otherwise, I can just forward them to you.
Sure.
Yeah, then we'll call it a day after Francis.
Okay, so Francis is a woman, and I'm going to get you even more confused. I go by my middle name, Denise. Last name is Spooner, Madison County, Indiana here. I just had a question in the chat that I did want to make sure that I got an answer to. We do have a fault line that runs right through our county. It's the Fortville fault line. Conveniently ends right at County Road 1300, where Poet Biodiesel plant just dug a test well a couple weeks ago. They did tell us, and I've been talking to Josh Leffel a lot, 400,000 CO2 tons annually for 12 years. And by the way, when we asked why 12 years, if this is, global warming climate change concern, and they did basically point blank said, well, it's because when the tax credits end. So they actually did admit that to us. They said the same thing on this plume, that they told Wabash County it's only going to go 0.6 miles. We're getting nearly double what Wabash County would get. And I just don't see that that is accurate information when the area of review goes out about 3 miles. I want to know, is there anyone that can give us a more definitive answer as to how far that plume would go? I would love to talk to any geologists or anyone that understands Madison County's geological formations that could help us better with understanding the risks with the fault line and the plume and how far would the front pressure go. We also have a lot of abandoned gas wells in our county. Compared to other counties, we have a lot more than others. And with the fault line, to me, it just seems like this is a bad location all around. I don't understand why EPA would approve it, but I guess now that listening to y'all, they could care less. I do know the EPA doesn't update their water standards in over 20 years, so I don't have any trust in the EPA to properly guide us. And now legislation is talking about this next session with our state taking over permitting something from the EPA to the Indiana DNR may happen as well. So I don't know if that's going to happen. But anyway, Indiana Chronicle Capital just put out an interesting article just a week or so ago about legislation coming to maybe let Indiana decide itself on these class wells without EPA approval. I don't know, but this is a complete disaster any way I look at it. But anyhow, is there anyone that's qualified that could give me a better understanding on the plume for 400,000 tons annually, 4.3 million over 12 years, and the front pressure, how far that would reach?
You know what? If you want to, Francis, could you reach out to me? And I don't know if they know Madison County in particular, but I probably can find geologists who are familiar with Indiana geology.
Okay.
I became familiar with geology after I left Indiana. And I'm happy to look through it with you. The thing that it's really important to understand that one of the main ways in which CCS poses a risk to groundwater is not through the immediate plume, but through the very large increase in pressure and the contamination of drinking water with brine.
Okay.
So the fact that they have a dinky little CO2 plume, whether or not that's right, any of these are going to have a major pressure increase, and that pressure can push brine, saltwater, into damaged groundwater, which is obviously important for drinking, irrigating, etc. But if you reach out to me, that I'd be happy. And if anyone wants to reach out to me, I'm always happy to chat.
Do we know how far out water would be contaminated?
It really, it's
400,000.
the problem that is being used here is that it's really site specific. It depends on the geology of the place. It depends on exactly what the current pressure is. It depends on the time period that they're injecting it. It's very site specific. In general, though, it doesn't even solve climate change, so it's a bad idea unless you're a person taking the tax credit. In this case, which case,
right?
Denise, do you have the stratigraphic well diagram? Because if you have that, then we can figure it out a little bit based on the other diagrams that we have.
Okay, we do have some information that POET has given our county. They just did a presentation to a select only invite people a few weeks ago. And when we asked when they were going to drill this test well, they said, well, within the next couple of weeks. They did it the very next day. And so there was a lacking transparency. If you weren't invited to this meeting, you didn't get to listen to their presentation. But we took pictures. We have downloaded the information on the EPA. I'm new to CCS, but I am not new at all to renewable energy. And as a real estate broker in Indiana, I'm traveled everywhere, fighting large scale solar. and that surrounds homes on multiple sides. And so I've read a lot of real estate reports on property damages. And so anyways, I've been battling renewable energy against property values for quite some time in Indiana. And lastly, to close this up, I do want to encourage all of those that are working with Derek Brayton to please hurry up and start speaking to the attorney that I have recommended. I don't know where my project is going to be in Madison County because it is in the jurisdiction of the city of Alexandria. However, I do know that that plume will go outside into the county's jurisdiction. Trying to get both of these governments to work together is might as well nail Jello to a tree. I don't know how much success I'm going to have in that. I'm trying to get our city under moratorium to look at this and to get people to care and understand that they shouldn't just point blank believe everything that Poet is telling them, and to do their own research on these things. But I don't know if we can stop it locally, but maybe we would have a chance with this lawsuit. And I have the attorney for him. There's no doubt. You can talk to Josh Leffel. We've spoken a lot. There's no doubt these two would be a great dynamic duo here in Indiana, but we need some action. And it's been a month, and I'm becoming very impatient because we're sitting ducks here in Madison County. And so anybody that can pull some strings or make something happen sooner, I would greatly appreciate that. He has the information and he can reach out to this attorney. We just need something done yesterday. And I'm just impatient and anxious right now with what's happening and how fast they're moving, how fast this is happening. We don't have much time.
Totally get it. I know he is talking with that attorney this week, so that is
Wonderful.
happening, but the wheels of justice move slowly. You know, nothing in the legal realm ever goes as quick as you want it to be, but we will make sure that we do the best we can and keep up the good fight. And yeah, maybe we can connect offline, but I know we are way over time. So I just want to again thank Lindsey for sharing your wealth of knowledge. I'm sure that was just like the tip of the iceberg. So you are welcome back anytime. And again, thank you all for coming. And I know we'll see some of y'all on Thursday, and hopefully everybody else at our next monthly meeting on September. I always forget to look this up. On September 13th. Yeah. September 13th will be our next meeting. Same time, same place. So hopefully we'll see folks then.
Thank you. Just can I say one more thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
If I can go scare anyone, I'm happy to scare anyone. If you need me to talk to groups, whatever, my contact's in the chat. And if for some reason I fail to respond to email, just give me a call. Thank you.
You are my kind of person, because I fully believe in bullying people to get them to do what I want. Amazing. And yeah, we can definitely share the chat with all the links and everything else, and any questions. We'll get it all out. We'll post this video on the indianaactionteam.org hopefully tomorrow-ish. So
maybe don't post my contact information on.
Yes, we can definitely bleep that part out.
Thank you.
Unless, have you ever had a stalker? Maybe you'd enjoy it. No. All right.
Actually, yes, I have.
Oh, okay.
Bye.
All right. We'll see y'all soon. Thank you. Bye.